Hello, today on EMDR with Alice, we're going to talk about how to utilize someone's faith practice. Specifically today, we're going to focus on the Christian faith practice as a resourcing in phase 2 of EMDR therapy. So as we talk about utilizing someone's faith practice, it's important that first we always have permission from the client to utilize this. That can be done in your intake process. I know some people have it in their intake paperwork where you have clients identify what their faith practice is, what their religion is, and if or how they want it utilized in the clinical setting. Once you have that identified and they have given permission for you to utilize that, it can be such a huge asset to the EMDR process. So let's talk about how to use it. So one of the ways that we can utilize a client's faith practice is by identifying with them what part of their religion or their faith practice is really specifically helpful for them. And so for some clients, they may identify scriptures, verses that are really helpful for them. Some clients talk about people in their faith community that are really important to them. And then some clients have a really active prayer practice, prayer life, and can identify even moments in time where they have really felt seen and heard by God. Some clients identify that they have a real close relationship with Jesus, and others may even identify that they feel like they have a close connection with the Holy Spirit. And so it can be unique to each client, and that is part of your history taking, is if they've given you permission to utilize their faith practice, is that part of your history taking is identifying what in their faith practice is really helpful and has historically been really helpful for them. This is also time where in our history taking we begin to clinically identify times where or places maybe in their faith practice where they feel blocks. Some examples of blocks that may present itself early in the treatment process might be confusion or anger at God for why these terrible things happen to them. So we would identify that as a block that's there, and we would work with it just like we would with any blocking belief, which I'll talk about on another episode. We would also identify with them, maybe they don't feel as connected to these resources in their faith practice as they have historically been. And so part of my history taking is I want to identify when they felt really connected to these practices or these aspects of their faith in their life, and when did that stop feeling like a resource for them or something that was helpful for them. And that again is part of my history taking. Oftentimes clients will identify after trauma that it's one of two pathways. Oftentimes clients will identify they feel closer to God or more connected in their faith. And then other people have identified that they actually feel further away from or more disconnected from their faith. Again, usually if it's the latter, if it's that disconnection, it's related to the trauma and often related to a blocking belief or blocks that are a part of the trauma experience, which is all part of what we'll be working on in the treatment process. So now let's talk about phase 2 in resourcing. Once we've identified what's been helpful for our client historically, we can do resource development and installation around those incidences. So one that I really like to do quite often is I'll ask clients about a peak spiritual experience that they've had where they felt really connected and really seen by God or Jesus, or they felt really connected to the Holy Spirit. It could be a moment in time that it could have just lasted for a couple minutes, or maybe it was for a period of time, like a day or days or even weeks, or even just like a whole season of their life. And so, but really again, identifying that moment in time where they felt that connection. And then we follow kind of our RDO protocol where we see if they can identify an image that helps them really connect with that moment in time. Maybe it's not an image, but it's a light or a color of a light. that represents God or represents the Spirit's presence. And as they're talking about that memory, that positive memory of that connection, we want to just get all the different elements of that memory to come forward as we can. So we may be asking about the things that they were smelling at the time, hearing, seeing, experiencing in their body, experiencing in their emotions. Really kind of get as detailed as you can about that moment in time. Once we have it here and we have it forward, we connect it with an image if we can. If it's not an image, we may connect it with a symbol that represents that for them, that represents that moment in time for them. So that could be in the Christian faith, like the cross, or it might be a dove, or it might be something else that represent a symbol that represents that moment in time and that connection. And then we apply our short, slow sets of bilateral, and we check in after 4 to 6 sets just to see if it feels like it's getting stronger and that memory feels more present for them. The more connected the client feels to the memory, the more connected they feel like that memory is to the present, then we kind of move to come up with a name or a phrase that helps them connect with that even more. And then again, following your protocol, once that's installed, then we kind of check it out and test it by having them think of something that's maybe been mildly irritating that's happened in the last week or two, notice any shifts that happen in their body, and then invite them to bring up their word or image that represents that spiritual resource. So that's just one example of how we can use a client's faith practice specifically in the resources part of our EMDR process. I'll share some additional resources that we can use in future episodes. Thanks for joining.